Show.
All right, everyone, welcome back to the 580 Show, episode 195 with special guest, the Shaw Classic champion, Josh Spurgeon. What's up, buddy?
How's it going? We're doing good.
Good. I appreciate you coming on, man. It's impressive performance, so I'm excited to get to talk about it a little bit.
Yeah, of course. I'm all open for everything.
Yeah. So you're coming off a little bit of a cold from following the show.
Yeah.
So but how was the show, man? How you've done a lot of competitions, from being the Arnold amateur, regional stuff, just more of like coming up throughout the ranks, and now you've done the Shaw Classic and obviously won. So how does it I mean, you did it last year too.
Yeah, I did it in 23. That was probably my first big amateur show. And if you go back and watch a stream or anything like that, it kind of looks like I was just there. I wasn't
Yeah.
really like competing. I was kind of just like there, happy to be there. And I was still learning how to compete at that point. I was more focused on the wrong things. I was focused on, well, if this person does that, then I only need to do this, or, instead of just worrying about what I can control.
Yeah, that's interesting because it's like, so my first introduction to you was just this big dude came to our show, and I remember it's funny because I remember the very first event at our regionals, like is Strongman Corp regionals, what? So 23.
Yeah.
Um the first event was a max axle wagon wheels, I believe, right?
Yeah.
Was it
It
on
was
max
like,
wagon wheels?
yeah, it was elevated axle for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, so it was a 13-inch max, and then you actually opened, I think, like low 800s on axle.
I think I opened 8, and then like everybody already went and they were doing
Yeah.
their second and third attempts. I opened at 8, and then I tied someone for 830 or 840 or something. But since I opened heavier, I won the event and didn't have to pull
Yeah.
again.
But the funny thing was you were pulling so heavy, you actually bent our axle bar.
Yeah, I
Do you
do
remember that?
apologize.
It was like a no, it was not like a solid steel one, but it was
Yeah,
just funny. That was my very first introduction to you, was this huge ass deadlifter, and you won basically on your opener.
yeah.
And then now here you are winning the Shaw Classic. So it's just funny to kind of see that. And this was the first year with this new format of the Shaw Classic, right? So
Yes.
how how did you qualify last year? Was it an online qualifier, how the heavyweights qualified?
Yeah, so last year it was just open men and women. So 2023 was just open men and women, and they did an online qualifier. They did this in 22, I believe, which was the first year for the open class. And I think they had women too that year as well. But 2023 was, and the years prior was, they took the top 16 from online qualifier. And Shaw's very meticulous. Like you had to one long video, weigh every single implement, weigh the plates, no cutting it. Like I think for me, it was a deadlift triple, just standard deadlift triple, raw, no figure eights, how Brian likes it. And then the second event was farmers. I think it was 20 or 25 feet, just max weight in per hand, no drops. And then the other event was a max circus dumbbell.
Hmm. Yeah, so they changed it this year. So it was like kind of like an open sign up, right?
Yep.
And then they obviously added the two other classes. So how obviously it got bigger. And I think without having like the numbers in front of me, the YouTube stream was enormous. Like
Yes.
how did it change, like from your vantage point, 23 to this year?
I think honestly, the strongest people are still going to qualify. The strongest people are still going to do well, things like that. It's not really going to change per se. Where it comes into play is I think the people that aren't as confident or haven't done as many shows, if it's just like OSG as well, they have the online qualifier as an option. It's easier for international people to do the online qualifier. They don't have to commit to the travel. Maybe they can't commit to the travel for financial or passport or visa, anything like that. Um, but so for 2023, I just think it was advantageous. It let more people try, where I think more people obviously signed up and this year and came in person than did the online last year. But it's like there's some risk involved still. You're not guaranteed all 3 days. You could just show up Friday and then you have the rest of the weekend, and it's up in the air.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that was We talked to Alec Sokup, who won the lightweights last week, and we were
Yep.
talking about that a little bit. But what did you think of the, three events to get to days 2 and 3?
I still haven't competed a lot, so none of that really bothers me. How many events you need to do. I think three is adequate. Four would probably be fair, but when you keep it, the only thing that people didn't realize, like on Friday, if you're going to have a bad event, it had to be log because there were so many ties because they didn't do split times for the sake of keeping the show quick. So if you had a bad event, it needed to be log, and luckily, like that was my worst event was log. And I
Yeah.
just was, I mean, that was technical too. It wasn't really like a strength thing. I just kept losing my balance and got fatigued quicker.
Hmm.
But for three events, I mean, he tested grip, he tested conditioning, he tested overhead. So I mean, he hit all the staples really.
Yeah. That was kind of what I was gonna say. It would suck to have a three event qualifier if the events weren't like adequate and I think testing like a
Yeah,
well-rounded strong man or strong woman. But with three events, that's the three events he chose were pretty solid for doing.
you have to think about too. He wants more people to sign up. He wants more people to come in person. He capped it at 50 people a class, I want to
Yeah, I
say.
think 200 total.
Yeah, so obviously there's not 50 open women, 50 lightweight women. There's probably 50 105s and 50 open men if they really want to be. So he ended up opening more slots for the open men.
Oh, that's cool.
So I don't know if he did for the 105. I know he did for the open men because I had a few buddies sign up after the fact, like a week later. I don't know if it's because of logistics or what, but I remember asking in rules, they said they were doing, lightweight, heavyweight, all one at a time. I wanted to make sure that just because we had overlap, say there were 65 open and only 50 105s, are you going to run 4 lane now? Or is it still going to be, solo? So it was a little, maybe that's the only discrepancy between the Friday events was some people actually went by themselves.
Yeah.
So, I
You
mean,
know it
even I'm racing a 105. That's great for me. Yeah.
right. No, that's true, man. And it's, like I like sometimes to watch, like your whole class go and like the classes, but I thought, what was really cool is you guys had the same judging. And obviously at the Shaw Classic, a
Yes.
big topic was the judging.
I
And
didn't mind it. I think
no,
I think it humbled a lot of people.
but you know, what's your opinion on that? I mean, you said you didn't mind it, but like I thought it was cool to see a real, I guess, true standard get upheld at a really high level.
Yeah. So it's actually funny you say this. I was talking to my dad, and he's still new to strongman, doesn't really understand all of it. But he was watching like worlds back in 2010, 2012, 2014, the Giants era. Everything was heavy, everybody was big. And he's like, dude, half their deadlifts and overheads wouldn't count now at like the show you just did. And I'm
Yeah.
like, it's true. I mean, it really is holding that standard and setting the standard like Brian wants to. I
Yeah.
didn't mind it though, just for the fact that we had the same judge the entire event. So it was fair. It may have been, harsh or strict, but it was fair.
Yeah, and that's what you want, I guess, as an athlete, right? Like, no
Yeah.
matter what it is, this is me. I curious your take on it, but like, whether it's like the judge is kind of being super lenient or the judge is strict or anything in between, I just want to be the same opportunity as the guy,
Yes.
or for female, so it's like at OSG, and this isn't a knock on anyone, but it's like
Mhm.
some judges, strongman's hard to judge. It's a
It
really
is.
hard thing to judge. Um, I'm not saying powerlifting isn't, but it has an exact standard, right? Where
Yeah.
it's like, the hip crease has to be below the top of the knee for the squat. Deadlifts, you can't hitch, it has to be locked out. Pretty simple stuff with three judges. Well, strongman, we're doing these really weird movements like a log or a medley press, for example, like at OSG last year.
Yeah.
It's a hard thing to judge. So
And
it's
they're all
like,
different.
right. And every athlete's different. Like you may come up and you just may have a different sticking point. So
Yeah.
the judge may be like anticipating a call. And like, so yeah, it's cool to go at the same time, but it sucks to like look back and have to be that person. It's like, man, that
Yeah.
sucks that I didn't get that call, that down call, but the person in lane two did. You know what I
And
mean?
there are things like that. I mean, everybody tries to be fair and do a good job, but sometimes I think it's on the athlete to vouch for themselves. Like I kept reminding my buddy Colton, I said, dude, like your lockout, it's a lockout, but it doesn't look that way. And you wear sleeves, it looks worse. It looks like He's just right before lockout, but that is his lockout because of his mobility. Like his lats are so tight. He's barrel chested. He's a great log presser, but it looks like he doesn't lock out his reps. You watch his training, everything like that. But it is a lockout. I said, dude, as long as you tell the judge that, and they made that clear in the rules too. Like if you have something limiting you, you've had surgery, you tore something, let us know right before, and we're not gonna have any problems. After that first rep, it's smooth sailing.
For sure. That's a really good point. That's probably, that's just like a good piece of advice to any competitor, like novice and up, is like if you've had an injury, it's mostly overhead, like with the lockout issues, but just go tell your judge and show them, and then it'll be, you know, won't sideswipe you when you're out there on the contest floor, right?
No, I agree.
No, that's cool. And it was I told Alec last week, but it was cool to be able to see four different classes go at the same time and do the same event because it's like, oh, this person's really struggling. They're not getting any reps. But man, if you look over at lane three, this
Yeah.
guy's getting 10 reps right now. So there was always, in my opinion, there's always something cool and eye-catching on the screen, like something that kept my attention. So,
I
yeah.
like that for the simple fact. The reason I like it is everyone starts and stops at the same time, basically. So yeah, the people later in the heat are warming up than the people earlier, but you have to have adequate warm up space. So like there was a bar for each class back there. There was a log for each class back there. And then by the time like I was going towards the end of all the classes, even on the deadlift, like I mean that took way longer than Brian expected just because of the unlimited attempts and small jumps. But I didn't even warm up until like, people they were at 700 some pounds.
Yeah.
And then I was like, okay, now the 105s are going. There's gonna be and I knew I tried telling some people this too. I'm like, you don't want to, you can do a feeler rep, that's great, but you don't want to open up so light that you're going to wait 35 minutes before your next rep. I was like, if you open as an open guy, if you opened up at like 650, you're going to wait 30 minutes before you do 800, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. And there's going to be that number where like it's like that weird, like,
crossover.
just hold up where everyone's like, even like kind of like the stronger guys are opening, the not as strong deadlifters are like just finishing, and it's like that
Yep.
overlap. So that's a really good point. I mean, then that's like one of the trickiest things in strongman is like learning how to like I guess access the show and know when to warm up. And like
I think that's something I'm finally getting better at. I still kind of try to see when other people are warming up too to kind of gauge. I'm not the most confident at like when I should warm up, but I knew at least, especially for deadlift, like just being a good deadlifter, I could go like before he announced the limited attempts, I was going to go 950, 1050, whatever I needed to pull. Now, did I think I was going to have to pull 1050? No, not really. It just depended on who made finals. And, there's random deadlifters all over the world that are great pullers that you just don't know about. But like I purposely went 800, 900 because I knew it'd give me adequate rest. Just like I went 900 or I went 850, 950, and then I was going to go 1050 because I knew there would be a lot of jumps in between where I think Joey went like three times in 6 minutes or something, because
mm,
he went like 900, 925, 950, and they were just like back to back to back,
yeah.
so it was just winding everybody. So you kind of got to make that choice. Like if you think you can pull 950, make that, skip over that jump of 925.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. How do you think like so obviously you've like kind of matured as an athlete and you're still a really young guy and you're
Yeah.
still relatively for how much you've accomplished, finals at OSG, finals at the Arnold, and now winning the Shaw Classic. So it's like crazy to say like you're still kind of like a young guy and gaining
Yeah.
experience, but what has been like help besides just competing? What's been helpful to you as far as like gaining that knowledge and kind of maturity in the sport?
Obviously, like my coach has done a lot for me, big laws,
Yeah.
but the majority of gaining knowledge is just talking to other people. Like you have to get outside your comfort zone. And it doesn't matter if it's a lightweight woman, a heavyweight man, just another athlete. Everyone's competing. Their weights are just relative. Everybody has experience. Like just go talk to people.
Yeah. Isn't it funny? You can just like I tell the same thing to people, but you can like any strongman contest or almost any competitor you can learn something from.
Oh, I completely agree.
So I'm so happy you said that because it's like there may be like a random 140 masters woman but she's been doing it for like
Yep.
19 years. And it's like she can bestow advice on. That's like the cool thing
Yes.
about it is
Yes.
that you can pretty much learn from anything. So that's really cool because I think even when you came in and won our regionals, you were extremely green to the sport.
That was my third show.
Wow. So
So
what was your
I
first ever show?
it's kind of funny. I didn't know really. I always wanted to do strongman. I watched it growing up and everything. It was never like a childhood dream to win World's Strongest Man because I didn't think it was attainable. My childhood dream was like going to the NFL because I thought I was really good at football. I went to D1 college. I walked on. I wasn't anybody special. And reevaluated my life and I said, hey, this dream's not attainable. I need to like have a career. But so then I just started powerlifting. But I did a powerlifting meet June of 2022 and I didn't even really want to do it because I wanted to do the online for Shaw because it was top 16 and it was mostly static. And I was like, well, I think I could do it. And I looked at numbers. I was like, oh man, I could have did it. But I was like, no, let me just finish powerlifting. So I did an OSG regional. Actually, Dungeon put it on out in the Northwest Pacific regional in 22. And I think I was like winning going into the last event. And I ended up getting second. And I think I competed against Connor Gordon, Zach Price, and Josh Hatfield. Those were like the big names that were at that show. I'm sure I'm forgetting some people, like Adam Rockwell and things like that. People just aren't maybe as popular or still competing at the same level. Everybody has life; it takes them a different path. But I got second there. I qualified for OSG in December from that show, and I hired Laz in like November, and was like, "Hey, I need to like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. Like, I don't know how to program. Like, I'm just lifting. I have no idea what I'm doing or getting myself into. And I didn't even really comprehend what I did at the time. But I was going to go to OSG, had everything planned. And like a week before, we had that hurricane come in
Hmm.
and it canceled my stay, it canceled my travel, canceled everything. I like couldn't get to the show. And then I found a flight, but didn't have anywhere to stay. And I'm like, I just can't commit to it. So luckily, Lynn was very supportive in my decision to like not go. It's like, don't worry about it. It's a fluke. Like, come back next year. So that's how I got to OSG last year was, off of my 2022 regional. But then I don't know if you remember this actually. Flash forward to the spring of 23, I was like learning like, and Laz isn't too familiar with Strongman Corp and like the process to get to the Arnold. He just knows, the amateur Arnold at least used to get you to the pro Arnold.
Right.
So he's like, we'll go, talk to people, figure it out. I actually called you because I saw your regional show, or I emailed you and then called you. I remember calling you in my car, like on the way home from work one day, and I'm like, how do I get to your show? And you're like, oh, you got to do a local show. And I'm like, well, where do I do that at? So I go on the website. You like walked me through it, and I was like, okay,
Oh,
I'll do
really?
this one. And it was like there was like four people there. Like I just kind of had to like show up.
Yeah.
But it was that was my first like show other than the OSG regional. That was like a fluke that I placed second at. I mean, there was a bench press, there was a deadlift, so like it was good events for me. There was no stones. Like the worst event for me was sandbag to shoulder, and that's just because I didn't have the, like bicep capacity to lift the sandbag. So I was a power
Yeah.
lifter that did squat, bench, and deadlift, and that was it. But
What a crazy story.
yeah, and then
Sorry.
I so no, you're good. So I called you when did the local qualified for your show, and then that's kind of where I took off a little
Wow. That's crazy. I don't remember that, but
bit.
that's awesome. That's cool. When you're at World's Strongest Man, that'll be my claim to fame that I walked you through how to sign up for a show.
I mean, you really did. You're like, this is exactly how you do it. I'm like, okay, like, I
It's
had no
just
idea. But you had your phone number and contact on your regional, and it says reach out if you have questions. So
yeah.
that was my question. I said, how do I get there?
No, for sure. And it is cool. Like that is one thing I like about having that event page is that people do reach out. And like I take for granted because I've been around it for a while now and I just know how to do stuff. But you forget that like this novice or this even people that are super strong like you may still be green to the sport or not they've went a different pathway, so they just
Yeah,
don't know. So I like to try to do that. But that's it. Your like journey, it's so funny because your strongman journey is so much different than everyone else's. Like you might have the most if you would like draw like a diagram of like did this show, then it's like yours is so weird.
it's very almost like yeah, like the OSG region. Well, like I did the OSG regional because I was like, well, how do I go to World's Strongest Man? And like, well, we'll go to the OSG final. But they had more like documentation on the internet to like kind of get there. They're
Hmm.
like, well, Giants Live is a qualifier. I was like, well, how do I get to Giants Live? Go to OSG Worlds. Well, how do I get there? Do a regional. And they just had more like of a website that was more like easier to navigate, and that's how I figured it out.
Yeah.
I didn't know, USS, Strongman Corp, unsanctioned OSG. I didn't even know, there was all those different things.
That's, and I bet you one thing that has really helped you is that you've just like jumped right in. So you name like some of the guys that were the Northwest OSG, right? Some like
Yeah.
impressive names, and you finished second. It's like you've just jumped in with like the best right from the start, and you're like, what the hell? Like I don't know what I'm doing, but like
Yeah.
I want. So I would imagine that that has helped you like a ton because your first show you're going against studs.
Yeah.
You know?
I'm still friends with Zach and Connor, and that's how I made friends with them was just that show.
Yeah, that's that is just so interesting. I didn't know that was your first ever show, so that's
Yeah.
crazy. But yeah, so yeah, and then you had to like backtrack and do a local show to get like
It
it's
was
just
different.
funny.
That's for
Yeah,
sure.
and that's crazy. I didn't know about I mean, I knew about the OSG hurricane, but I didn't know you were
Yeah.
one of the people that were like affected by it. So that's
It was a blessing in disguise because I would have got embarrassed at the show. Like I would have
yeah,
finished like 60th. Like it would have just been bad. Like
yeah.
it saved me money, it saved me time, and I was kind of just able to work with Oz for a little bit, get to know each other, and then go from there.
Yeah. So I mean, obviously, you work with Big Laws. He's one of the biggest names in strongman still, even being retired. I think he's getting more and more popular now.
I
But
think
like,
so.
how is he as a coach? Like, obviously, it seems like you speak highly of him, but like, what are has he been able to kind of like bestow a lot of wisdom on you, and how does he kind of what's his coaching style with you?
I think it depends on the athlete. You're going to get a different experience, but like the number one thing is he's honest. He's not going to blow smoke up you and say, "Yeah, you can go to Worlds. Yeah, you can do this," and he's just going to take your money. Like if a 90-pound open male wants to be world's strongest man, he's going to say, maybe you should do something else.
Yeah,
I'll coach you and make you get stronger, but you're going down this path probably isn't for you. And that's just the reality of it. And some people need to hear that. Some people don't believe it, and some people think he's an asshole for saying that. But I mean, it's just the reality of it. He's 100% transparent with you, and he genuinely cares about you as like an athlete. And I've talked to other people, and they've said the same thing with this. Like he cares about your mental health. He cares about your personal life. I mean, he actually cares about more than just hitting numbers in training and showing up to shows and doing well.
yeah. Well, that's really cool, and I can kind of attest to two things is, so he was coaching a local guy, not like no offense to this kid, but like just a like, lower level kind of newer open athlete that like competes at our shows. And Big Laws actually got in the chat of our live stream and shouted out his athlete like at our random, it
That's pretty
wasn't even a
cool.
sanctioned, it was a random deadlift
Was it
only
the Polar Express?
no, it was we did a 580 deadlift championship, unsanctioned, the
Okay,
coolest straps, it's just a max out, basically a bro max out deadlift day. And Big Law's got in our chat, like just on our free YouTube thing, and like shouted out his athlete, which I thought
that's
was
pretty
so
cool.
because I was commentating and I just saw it pop in. I'm like, is that really Big Laws? And then I clicked and it really was. So he obviously cares and pays
Yeah,
attention. But there's something I've said it on here before, but there's something super impressive about coaches that can be honest and say, hey man, like yes, I coach, but maybe this isn't the best fit. Or like, I'm gonna be
yeah,
honest with you and like because that's just gonna be a bad relationship. Like
yeah,
you're gonna get pissed as the athlete, and then the coach is gonna be frustrated, and it's gonna be like so that's really cool that he's honest, but obviously so
yeah. I
kind.
mean, he's not arrogant or cocky or anything like that. He's just completely transparent as a coach. Like he's going to tell you what to do. If you're doing it incorrectly, or you're doing really well, he's going to let you know. I mean, it's
Yeah.
not. He's not just going to praise you all the time and take your money and be like, "Yeah, you're doing great," and then you finish last at a show. Oh
Yeah.
man, I don't know what happened.
Yeah, right. Well, that's really important as a coach, and that's awesome that he does that. And so no, that's cool, man. I was just curious how, and what's really funny about Big Laws is you can tell when he's such a good commentator. I think some
Yes.
of it is accent, but obviously his insane knowledge of the sport and
Yeah.
how he, as an athlete and being in it for so long. But you can tell how badly he wants to root for his athletes, but he doesn't. And I think it's
Yes.
so like, I think it's so commendable because I do think it's a little tacky when it's a professional show and commentators are like, they're literally the live stream commentator and they're like putting down their mic and you hear them screaming for their athlete. I'm like, if I was an athlete that show, that pissed me off. And I think he
Yeah,
does such a good job of like, you can tell he really cares, like deep in his being, but he's like remains professional. Like I saw it when I heard it when you were doing events because I knew Big Loss coach you and he did
yeah.
such a good job. So yeah, man, he's
As for like his actual coaching style, like programming, I mean, I know several people that do the same shows that I do. Like Scott D is the dude that I did the regional with at your show. His programming style is going to be very similar. It's based on the show. So, like, yeah, me and Scott may have a couple different, I mean, depending upon the shows you're doing too. I mean, maybe because I think me and Scott were both doing Shaw. So, like, 75% of our training was the same, different numbers, the same exercises. But sometimes Scott would carry the sandbag farther than me because he was also doing a show up in Canada that had Max Husafel.
mm,
So he does, it is individualized programming, but don't be surprised if you and your buddy are doing the same show and you have similar exercises. I
yeah.
mean, you should if you're doing the same show,
Yeah,
honestly.
like well,
So
that's one tricky thing is like with individualized like online coaching, it's like, yeah, there's gonna be some differences, but you guys are in the same class, prepping for the same show. It's like there'll be a couple, you guys are very similar athletes too.
yeah,
Like, so it's how much difference can you have? But that's
exactly.
cool. That's really cool. That's a interesting tidbit about him, and that's cool.
He does program typically more percentages. He doesn't give you a percent, he'll give you a number. But there are sometimes, he'll say like circus dumbbell RPE 9 or RPE 8, deadlift RPE 9. And I struggle with RPE not because I overshoot typically, it's because like I don't max out a lot. Like I can't tell you the max. Actually, I do remember the last time I max deadlift, but it wasn't a max. Like he programmed me 885 before the Arnold from the floor, like standard height. So I pulled 885, but it wasn't a max.
Hmm.
So like I've never maxed log, I've never maxed deadlift, I've never maxed a lot of my lifts because there's no point. If I wanted to, I could, and that's the thing too. Like I think it was after the Arnold and before the Shaw, I had a little bit of time, and he's like, "Well, do you want to pull a deadlift single? Do you want to do this?" And I said, I want to do whatever's going to get me ready for Shaw. Like, I don't care about any of the stuff in the gym. He's like, all right, just some people, they like feel like they need to do that and, it keeps them on track. And that's just that differences between athletes. I
Yeah.
said, no, dude, like, you tell me what to do and that's what I'm doing. And he's like, all right, well, you're in control. And I said, no, like, you're in control. You tell me. So he will, like, if you don't have access to things or you don't have a certain, bar at your gym, he does take that into account and try to find alternatives for you.
No, that's one thing I find like with online coaching is that some of my clients respond super well to RPE and it just like seems to be the best way. And then some people I do percentages and I go in and I put their exact numbers because that's how some people are.
Yeah.
Like the producer of this podcast, Dante, he cannot do RP. He can't be trusted with
It
it.
can't be
He's
trusted.
he's the most confident guy in the world where like he can miss a double. Like if he's supposed to hit a double at like RP9, he'll miss it and then try to justify why he's gonna go up in weight. So
It's
like
tough.
yeah, so but that's cool. You learn what each athlete,
Yeah.
responds well to.
Yep.
Um but so man, the big thing is, you won the Shaw Classic, and next year you're gonna be with the big boys.
That's correct.
How does that feel? Like,
It's starting to feel a little bit more real as time goes on. Like it was, I wasn't like super reactive after doing the Stones because I didn't know that I won. Like I didn't really believe it, but I didn't know. Like I hinted at this, but like the Shaw 23, I was focusing on how many points I had, how many points this person had, like just stupid little things. Where like, and then when I went to OSG and got sixth, I didn't look at the events. I just looked at like where my placing was. I didn't look at the points. I didn't look at this is what I had to do. I just looked at the placing. I was like, okay, I got to try harder. Okay, but then like the last day on OSG, I kind of knew like it was physically impossible to podium, and it was really I could only get fifth or sixth just because of the weighing system, and Marcus and them just killed it on the before the finals.
yeah.
So there's just only so many points to sway there. But I just stopped looking at the points and went from there. So at the Shaw this year, like I'll be honest, and I told Liz this too, and I don't know if I had time to really tell Laz, but I told anybody going to the show, like, I was like, if I get top five, I'll be happy. I said, making finals is like a PR. I mean, that's better than I did last year. I got 13th and 23 out of 16 people. So I was
Yeah.
like, just making finals was my first goal. And then it was like the second event in, and it was coming down to the bag medley, which I'm really not that quick at. And then I did really well on it. And I didn't train it very that much just because I tweaked my bicep about a month out. So I didn't really train that, the sandbag or stones. And so wasn't confident. I'm like, well, there goes podium. I was in like seventh by the third event. I'm like, oh, there goes podium. Like, oh, I'm screwed. Like, I'll make finals, but it's okay. And then I did really well in the bag event, and I was like, oh shit, like. And then I came in Saturday in fourth, and I was like, okay, like podium's a possibility. And then I did really well on circus dumbbell, which like I think I tied for second, joint second on there, and I thought like that was going to be my worst event was dumbbell, not log. So I thought like I was going to have to play catch up after dumbbell, but the strict judging actually helped me because I have the stability to hold a lockout and it didn't bother me. But some people they were saying, oh, I'm going to get 9 reps on circus dumbbell, blah blah blah, and then they weren't used to holding it for 2-3 seconds and they fatigued them quicker.
Mm.
So just going from day to day, and I didn't look at the points, but the placing. When I was going against Nick, I didn't really know I was ahead of Nick until I placed that fourth stone, went on to the fifth, and I dropped it, and I looked, and I was like, "Oh shit! Like he doesn't have the fourth done." And I was like, or he was just finishing, and I was like, oh, I was like, well, it's like, well, then he got it, and I'm like, okay, well, if he gets this fist on, so is he going to win? And I didn't try to pick, or maybe I did try to pick it, but I dropped the fifth stone just because I felt like my pec was going to tear off. So I
Mm.
dropped the fifth stone. I went to load it, and I think I was leaning a little to my left, and I felt something a little bit. And I was like, okay, like that's not good. So I stopped, and I was cheering Nick on to get the fifth, but I didn't realize, he would have had to beat me by 2 or 3 people to win. I didn't know that.
Mm.
So then walking back, Laz is like, "You did it, and Liz is like, "You did it. Like I had it all calculated. Like this is all you needed to do." And Liz is a wizard with the numbers,
Yeah.
and like at that point, it kind of set in, and I was tearing up a little bit and stuff like that because I'm going to a show that is really on par with like or above World's Strongest Man. It's the pinnacle. It's one of the big four shows, and I earned my way there. I didn't get an invite just based on my resume or anything. So it does mean a little bit more to me at least.
Yeah, that had to be an absolute crazy feeling because that's like, I think right now with like a definitive earned spot, that's like the biggest one you can have is winning the Shot
Yeah,
Classic and then going on that stage next year. It's gonna be have to be so crazy for you with the names that you're gonna be up there with, and it's well deserved, man. I think even this year you would have done well, but with a full another year of training, you're gonna be on stage with literally the greatest strongman,
yeah,
including yourself in the world.
yeah.
Like,
Top
it-
16 strongest men on earth, basically.
yeah,
So
yeah. Well, that's true. For people that don't know, the Shaw Classic, thing it goes to the strongest man on earth. So you're gonna be competing on the strongest man on earth next year, and it's carrying the American flag out. And man, that's cool. So
I'm hoping it's not my first, bigger show. I'm hoping to do well at OSG and then maybe open some doors there.
yeah,
Or like last year, Austin Andrade got invited to a Giants live show after winning the Shaw Open. So I know that's a possibility, but not a guarantee. Things like that. So I'm hoping, I might be able to skip a step or do well enough at OSG to maybe get invited to a giant slide before SMO or maybe even Worlds. It's OSG is an unofficial invite for Worlds, but a guarantee for Giants Live. Podium there.
right. Well, it definitely will open up more doors to you, and it's crazy because if you look at your finishing place last year at OSG. You're right in that mix of guys that got invited to World's Strongest Man. There's actually people that finished under you
Yes.
that you beat.
I think Camby and somebody else got invited to Europe's, which is,
Yeah.
I mean, dual nationality, like totally deserved and everything. But they got invited to Europe's Strongest Man, and then based on their performance there, they got invited to World's Strongest Man. So, I mean, even if I don't podium at OSG, there's a chance, but it's not a guarantee. I'd rather lock it in, podium, and move on from there.
Right. No, it's crazy because you're already in the mix. And I think doors are just going to continue to open up for you. So don't forget the little guys once you're What
No,
show, man?
never.
No,
I told you the whole story, man. It was
that's
from the beginning. I called you and it's like, hey, where did I go?
that's crazy, dude. But was there anything else at the Shaw Classic, like as an athlete that like stuck out that Brian, because it just seems like from the viewer, from me as the strongman fan, it seems like he's doing so much.
I'm not. I don't want to get too repetitive. I watched you and Alec talk,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
and Alec hinted on basically everything. But Brian, Carey, and like their team are just doing such a good job for the athletes at all levels. It's not like they're treating the open men different than the lightweight women. Like it's truly fair and equal, and we're getting the same treatment minus all the luxuries that the pro get, like paid and things. Not paid, but like their trip, paid for and stuff like that. At the show, actually, everyone's getting the same treatment. We're getting treated on by the same people. We're getting IVs from the same people. We're getting the same volunteers, the same refs, the same everything as the pro athletes are. And I think that speaks volumes.
Yeah, yeah, no, and I know I appreciate it because I know we talked with Alec last week, but it's just like everything we listed last week, like even just like the recovery rooms and
Yes.
what like how impressive and what a crazy just feat that Brian's pulling off.
I actually thought they weren't going to be available this year. We didn't hear too. The only thing we really heard about via email was an IV drip, and I think it's because you had to, if you wanted one as a weight class athlete, you'd want to sign up and make sure you have that time slot and have everything taken care of. But
Yeah.
that's kind of what we got communicated about. But the year prior, they actually told us about all the amenities and stuff, and I just didn't want to assume it would be available for this year. It's like we flew in Tuesday. I actually stayed with Alec and a couple other people.
Oh, did you really? I didn't know
Yeah,
that. I trained
yeah.
with those
So
guys this past week. That's funny.
yeah, I saw that and I was like, because I saw you post something. Maybe it was the podcast, and I was like, "Well, I'll see you next week." And then I saw you guys train together, and I was like, "Holy
Yeah.
shit!"
I go down there once a quarter for work, so it's nice to have Brew
Okay.
House to just be able to drop in. I met you mentioned Colton earlier on the pod.
Yep.
This was my first time actually meeting him. He did his OSG deadlift qualifier while I was there. So
Yeah.
it's just that's a pretty impressively strong gym. I think they have like 6 or 7 guys qualified for OSG.
I
It's
wish I
just
had a gym with one of them
yeah,
there.
I mean
I mean, I
like
love
I
my gym, and they're doing everything they can for me. It's just it's harder to there's an argument around this, but like sometimes it's easier to train someone, sometimes it's harder to train by yourself. I mean, it is what it is. It's the hand I'm dealt with. But I will say my gym is very accommodating for like what I want to do. Like
that's cool.
they have a fabricating shop in the gym, so like a dumbbell breaks, they weld it back together.
Oh
They've welded
wow.
me a frame. They've built me power stairs. I bought concrete with the gym owner on a Saturday. We mixed stones up. Like they're like as long as I'm willing to provide money and support and stuff like that, then they're willing to help me achieve things. And like they built me a block for OSG last year, so like
Wow.
they're really accommodating and like helping everybody.
What gym
They
is it?
West Bank Athletic Club.
Okay, that's really
It's
cool. Cause
near Belle Chase, Louisiana.
okay, yeah, that's really cool. I mean, that's all you can ask. That's above and beyond what you can ask for from a gym,
Oh, 100%.
especially with
Yeah.
strongman. It's so goofy, and we tend to forget how niche our little world is
Yes.
sometimes. Like, but no matter what, you're basically at the top of this niche thing we love now. So that's
Trying
awesome.
to be.
Um, but so is the biggest school, of things you haven't done yet? And I mean, you have so much time, but is it WSM?
Um, like if I had to win one show or go to one show,
Yeah, I mean,
I think it's hard to say. Like Worlds is the prestigious legacy that's been going on for, ever.
yeah,
So I think that, ultimately is at the top just because the title that it holds. I mean, you're the world's strongest man of that year, of those athletes and everything. So I would say that's probably still the most prestigious. The strongest man on earth has, the historical behind it. If you really want to get into it, the title behind it and everything. That's why Brian bought it. But that's still new. It's not as prestigious, maybe to the common or public knowledge.
yeah,
People really don't even know about the show that aren't too involved in strongman. But they go to the Arnold and they know the Arnold Classics there. They go to the people watch CrossFit. They know the Rogue Invitational is inviting women this year. So those are more mainstream to the public. But for me personally, like those are the four big shows I'd love to go to and do well at.
Yeah. Isn't it crazy just how like you can rattle off all that stuff? It's insane how many opportunities there are now in strongman.
It really is. Like even 5 years ago, it was completely different. Like completely different.
It's
It
you
was just OSG, Giants Live, Worlds,
you're a
Arnold.
hundred percent right. And
Like
it's really cool. It's really cool to see. And I think this upcoming year we're gonna see even more changes than we've ever seen. Obviously, Strongman Corporation got bought out,
yes,
and Lynn is one of the owners. So, like, how's that going to be affiliated with OSG? I think like this upcoming year, we're going to see even more opportunities and more stuff going on in
Lynn does own it with somebody else. I can
with
picture his face.
James.
Yeah, I can picture his face, but I can't remember his name. And I do a discredit to James because I always say, yeah, yeah, no, Lynn owns it, but I'm like, it's they both own it
Yeah,
technically, and
yeah,
they're both doing a lot for the sport. I mean, they're really going all in with ADL and the live streams. The OSG regionals are getting better and better quality, and now they're spreading that down to regional shows for Strongman Corp. And there's going to be some link in Strongman Corp, I think, to OSG. So like I believe like even the winner of ASM this year will get invited to OSG.
yes,
It may not be official. I can't remember, but the winner of ASM, can go to OSG.
right, right. And I think they're gonna build up all the ASM over the next like year or two. I think they're gonna really make ASM like the number one show for America, which I
Yeah.
it's called America's Strongest Man. It should be, right?
There
And
should be more to it, like
yeah,
reward, not other
yeah,
than
right.
like I should say opportunity. There is already reward for doing the show, especially financial. But like there should be more opportunity because I know I'm very involved with some of the Canadians now, just making friends with them, and they compete the way they do, doing 6 shows in like 8 weeks because they qualify for each show, and ultimately it's to get to the next one, and that last one, Canada's Strongest Man, gets you an auto invite, the winner an auto invite to Worlds.
Right.
So in our defense, why does America's Strongest Man, like Lucas, kind of vouched last year, why does that not an invite to Worlds?
Yeah. And
But
we're yeah. Yeah.
I think we're working towards it, so it's getting better. It's not going to go in the opposite direction, that's for sure.
For sure. I think it would be so cool for like the heavyweight ASM is to have all you guys there. Like
I think that's the goal
a
eventually.
stacked lineup. Like
It
stacked.
it'd be tough to get, Evan Singleton, all those
For
names
sure.
like Bobby Thompson, things like that, just because well, right now it's not stepping backwards in talent, maybe a little bit it is, but like Lucas Hatton's going this year, you know, you
He's
know,
a stud. I mean,
exactly. He got third at Strongest Man on Earth. He's going to America's Strongest Man.
yeah.
So, I mean, it's not maybe stepping back in competition, but maybe stepping back in the circuit.
Yeah. No, I get it. And I wish there was a way to I guess change that.
Yeah, and say someone that nobody's never heard of goes to America's Strongest Man and beats Lucas, Evan Singleton, all these people, and now they're like, well, who the hell is this guy, and why is he not getting invited to shows, and why are these guys getting invited?
Yeah.
So there's some risk, as an athlete too. You kind of have to watch what you do just because of the backlash that could come from it.
No, that's true. People tend to forget that like that man, that was a really good point. That kind of just made me think because like it would look bad if Evan went. I'm just using Evan Singleton as an example because he's
Yeah,
like
he's just a known
he's
name.
at the top of the sport, like
Yeah,
the top. And and then he goes and does bad, and bad shows happen. They're
they
bound to happen
have.
to everyone. So he gets flamed, and then they're like, well, this guy should get invited and not him. When in reality, maybe like at Worlds, Evan will just destroy that guy. You just don't know.
Yeah,
And injuries happen. So I get it. It's like if it is a step back for Evan and it's a risk, and this is such a like health wise a risk to us as competitors every time we do it, there's an inherent risk that you might get injured.
that's what I was going to bring up next to it. It's a timing thing too. Like we just had, Strongest Man on Earth. Now we have a Giants live show, another Giants live show, and there might even be a third one coming up. And then they have the Rogue in November. ASM's and it's about a month away, I think now. So it's all kind of, would you rather show loyalty to Colin Bryce and do Giants live, or all of a sudden just do America's Strongest Man and say, oh, sorry, I can't go over there,
Yeah.
things like that. You got
Yeah.
to, you do have loyalty as an athlete, especially if they gave you an opportunity to keep coming back and show, and prove yourself.
Yeah. And you do have to just pick your spots. Like to go back to the injury thing,
Yeah.
like you just sometimes you just
And
can't fit all that in there.
that's what people forget about. Like just take Mitchell Hooper, for example. He'll go and win several Giants live shows that he's not peaked for. And I think people don't realize that. Like he doesn't have a 12-week prep for half the Giants live shows he does, and he still wins.
Yeah, he's incredible.
But like Matt Rag did really well last year because he worked in silence, and I think it was the Strongman Open and got second.
Yeah.
Almost beat Hooper.
Yeah.
And that was the dilemma there. Was like, well, Hooper didn't peak for it and still won. Well, Matt Rag peaked for it. It doesn't really matter. I mean, you're all going to the same show and doing the same events.
Right. Right.
If you're
No.
not healthy, don't show up. It's that
Right.
simple.
Yeah, no, that's true, man. But yeah, that's insane. That's it's a lot to unfold there. And man, I'm so happy we were able to get you on. Is there anything
Oh yeah.
else? I definitely I really encourage everyone to get on Instagram and follow Josh. It's just Spurgeon underscore Josh, right? It's up. If you're watching
Yeah.
on YouTube, it's up on the screen. But if you're just listening, Spurgeon underscore Josh on Instagram. Is there anywhere else? Like, do you use any other social medias or anything?
No, it's really just Instagram for right now,
Yeah,
honestly.
definitely follow because he's a young guy still, and it's insane. Like just talking to you and how much Josh has accomplished. So follow his journey in strongman. You can say he did it before a lot of other people, and when he gets to Worlds and all these other even bigger shows and stuff like that. So I just appreciate the time so much, man.
Yeah, no problem. Anytime, Josh. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much. And thanks everyone for listening. We'll talk to you guys next week.